This is the last panel in here today, but we saved the best for last. Ladies and gentlemen of Texas Frightmare Weekend, let's give a big Texas-sized welcome to the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Malcolm McDowell. You can use this one if you want to, so you don't lean forward.
This is good.
Your choice.
I'm sure.
So this is, of course, a 50th anniversary retrospective chat about Clockwork Orange, but we can talk about anything. We'll kick it out to you guys after a few questions, and if you have questions about this man's, extensive, iconic body of work, don't shy away from asking those too. Being this is a 50th anniversary, just kind of a broad, general question. When the film came out, it was so infamous and notorious, but now, how do you kind of look back on it 50 years later?
I don't.
Perfect.
I don't really like thinking about things in the past.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if I did, I wouldn't be working now.
Yeah.
And of course it's one of the jewels in my crown, if you like.
Yeah.
An incredible part to be asked to play as a young actor. But I was ready for Kubrick. I was ready for it.
Yeah.
And I can say that now. I didn't realize it at the time, but I'd done some amazing films before that. One being If, which was my first one. Yeah, thank you. And If is an extraordinary film, and great director Lindsay Anderson. And Kubrick saw that film many times, and in fact he stole whole huge blocks of it. In a way, for Clockwork, it's very influenced by If, and in a very good way. Of course, Kubrick, he was an extraordinary director in many ways. Very, very different from Lindsay Anderson. They were opposite ends of the pole. Lindsay was nurturing. Kubrick was
Not.
well, he was to me. I mean, I really dug him because I liked his real black sense of humor, and he liked mine. I could make him laugh. Oh my God! That was one of the pleasures of doing the movie. Actually, was seeing him laugh if something came up, off script, which is pretty much every day. I'd see him out of my periphery vision stuffing his handkerchief in his mouth, and he was laughing so hard, when I'd done something outrageous, singing in the rain or whatever it was. So I don't want to tell that story again. Jesus, I'm so bored of it.
You heard it if you were at the Texas Theater the other night.
Yeah. By the way, that was a great screening, and I don't know if any of you were there, but wow, that is some theater.
Yeah.
And you really ought to really support these guys, because that's a unique experience, and it's such an iconic place, the Texas Theater. You should really, really support them, because you don't want to lose that. It's just too important.
Absolutely.
To the community here, and those guys that are running it are doing a great job in my view.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah. And the 4K, the 50th anniversary 4K is
good, huh?
It's like you've never, if you've seen the film a million times, like many of us have, it's like seeing it in a whole new way almost. It's just so crisp and clear and beautiful.
Yeah.
There's a kind of, there's so many kind of notorious, infamous stories around this movie, but one I read was that originally Anthony Burgess, the author, needed money, and so for a quick $1, he sold the rights to Mick Jagger for $500, and they were going to make it with the Rolling Stones as the Droogs.
No,
is that true?
Almost right. No. Mick Jagger did not own it, he never bought it, but Burgess was offered, which he thought was a going rate at the time, $500 for the rights.
Wow.
But to be, if they made the movie, he would have been paid more,
Right.
So It was just to secure the rights while they got their shit together.
Yeah.
And they never, thank God, got their shit together. Because Stanley got Warner Brothers, not himself, to buy the rights so that his name would not be associated with it, because that would have doubled the price. So no fool he. I mean, he was a good producer.
Yeah.
He was a great producer, actually. So, as well as being a great director. So, the idea was, when these two characters, they were the executive producers on the movie, and I never met them until 40 years later. Actually, I only met one of them, the other one died. It was Max Rabb and Cy Litvinoff. And Cy, he's now in the actors' home in LA, and he's getting up in age. He's, you know, nearly 90, I think. A great guy, and a sweet man, and I reconnected with him. Well, actually, I never, he was just a name on the movie that I never even, I kept saying, who is this guy? And you know, he didn't really exist. And then I met him years later in LA, and he's really a cool guy. In fact, I bought his watch from him. He was very happy about it. And the watch belonged to Adam West. Wow. So I went, I'll buy it. What do you want for it? What? Jesus. I said, gee, you tried to screw me early on, and now you're screwing me now. I can't believe it. Anyway, yeah, so Mick Jagger nearly played it. And I know that the Stones love the book. And in fact, some of their early stuff, you hear them, you know, giving some of the Nadsat, the Burgess language.
Yeah.
And Mick always wanted to talk to me about it. He, you know, they loved it. They loved the film, of course. Bowie loved it, dressed like me, early on in his life. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, can you imagine how many people have sort of been influenced by A Clockwork Orange? You know, I mean, all the rock singers, Madonna, you know, all of them. Jesus, I mean, there's so many of them. And not only that, but Jean-Paul Gaultier had a whole collection on A Clockwork Orange, and I saw him at a film festival somewhere. I didn't know who the hell he was, actually, but he told me that he, you know, done his whole collection, 2 weeks of it, and it was all Clockwork Orange, the music and everything. Of course, it lends itself to it, you know.
Yeah.
The music is so extraordinary.
Absolutely. Yeah.
With Wendy Carlos, who was Walter then. You know, there's some wonderful Moog synthesizer stuff on the Beethoven. It's sheer brilliance. And you know, he did a whole other score. He did so much music.
Yeah.
And he played it to me in his brownstone in New York before the movie opened, and I was blown away at how amazing it was. Stanley only used a small percentage of it. But anyway, yeah, we were very lucky to get her. And it was great stuff. I once went into Stanley's living room or office. It was all the same. It was all, the whole house was an office, basically. And he was listening on the headset, you know, and he just asked me to not interrupt. So I thought, oh, he's probably listening to, you know, Von Karajan's Beethoven's Ninth or something, you know. Anyway, he took the cans off and he goes, another near miss at Heathrow Airport. He's so paranoid, he was actually listening to the, you know, traffic controllers at the airport. And he figured there was a near miss, and that's why he wasn't going to get on a plane.
Wow.
Well, even though he had a pilot's license, he wouldn't get on a plane. So he never went anywhere. So they go, wow, he loved London. Yeah, he loved it because he wouldn't travel anywhere else. And he did all those movies, you know, in London. I guess from Lolita on, they were all shot within 30 kilometers of his house.
Yeah, yeah. And so, speaking of London, and you mentioned, you know, how iconic and influential the film was, even when it was released all the way to now, and it's still iconic and influential. But you know, a lot of people have experienced it at different times. If you were lucky enough to experience it when it came out over here, it was, of course, you guys knew you were making something that would be controversial and kind of infamous. Critics were pretty notorious in Siskel and Ebert, but in England it was...
Oh, Siskel and Ebert, what a pair of enemies. Lazy critics, honestly. I despise them. I have no time for them.
It seems like they didn't understand that a movie about violence in films was that's what the movie was about. It literally is all there on the
Well, it's
surface.
not about violence. That's the least of it. And when the critics sort of got on this bandwagon of violence, I mean, Jesus, have they seen a Sam Peckinpah movie? For Christ's sake? Have they watched the news? The news was Vietnam. It was coming in real bad every damn day.
Yeah.
So don't talk to me about violence
Yeah.
in film. We basically were, as a reflection of what's going on in society.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
That's really it. Now, Burgess took it a little further because he kind of looked into the crystal ball, but not really. We've had gangs, we've had drugs, we've had street fights and violence and all. But what we haven't really had was the takeover of the government to take over our brains and imagination and personas.
Yeah.
So that was sort of a new take, you know,
Yeah.
on the whole thing. And the whole political element of the film is now really why I think it's still relevant.
Yeah.
It's not the look, because of course the look is now old hat. It's 50 years old, but it's really the whole point of the book is that it's the freedom of man to choose, whether he become immoral or moral or whatever. But you have to have the freedom to choose, and that's basically what it's about.
Yeah, and point being, it felt like they were missing the point. But
I think that, you know, look, it's very easy. Before Clockwork Orange came out, I guess seeing it for the first time blew people's circuits, that fused them, made them nuts, you know. And but I know that young people absolutely loved it.
yeah,
And they laughed, you know, a lot of the satirical comedy kind of stuff. It's black, yeah, it's black. But, you know, it's a stylish piece. And, you know, my brief was simple yet difficult. My brief was to make an immoral man likable. That's it.
yeah,
Watchable.
yeah.
The audience have to get on Alex's side somehow.
Because you have to sympathize with them.
Well, sympathize, I wouldn't even use that term. It's a little strong because he's, of course, a thug,
Right.
a rapist, and turns out a murderer. If I'd have played it in a naturalistic way, it would have been untenable. It wouldn't have been a movie.
Yeah.
Couldn't have done it. But to do it in a heightened style, you know, it tells the story without, you know, it tells exactly what it is without it being unwatchable. That's
Yeah.
my view, anyway. And I guess people are still watching it, so I guess, you know, from that point of view, we did succeed.
Yeah. What I was getting at was the release in England, in the UK. You know, there's this kind of misunderstanding that the film was banned, and really it was Kubrick in the studio with
Correct.
how people were reacting to it. And I was going to ask you to kind of give us a sense of what the tone was when the film came out in the UK.
Well, you know, they loved it. I mean,
Yeah.
the whole idea of Kubrick banning it, it's a bit rich because he didn't ban it in the first week. He didn't ban it in the first month.
Yeah.
or the first 6 months, or 9 months. He banned it when everyone had seen it.
Right.
After a year. So to say he banned it,
Right.
that's bullshit.
Yeah.
I mean, he withdrew the film because he was getting death threats of the family. Now this is what Christiana told me. So, and Scotland Yard advised him, well, if you don't want to do that, just remove the film, which is what he did. And even 20 years later, he still kept the ban going. I guess, but you know, knowing Stanley, he was onto something else. And he didn't want to be bothered with it. But you know, if you got on a flight of 50 minutes, went to Paris, you could see it in the cinema.
Yeah.
It played on the Champs-Elysees for 12 years in the same cinema.
Wow.
12 years!
12 years, yeah.
I mean, I've always thought those French were a bit weird. I mean, they love their movies over there, believe me.
One last question I want to ask you, and then we'll take it out to you guys. Just in 2019, in the estate of Burgess, they found a 200-page manuscript in which he was writing essentially a sequel called A Clockwork Condition. It was kind of this unfinished manuscript, and I was just curious, kind of your reaction to know that there was a sequel out there to it.
Well, Anthony, listen, he's a writer. He's got to make a buck or two, and he sort of resented the fact of the movie. He didn't resent it right at the peak of it, because I spent a week with him in New York, and he loved it. But then, I guess he got thinking about it. This movie is making all this money, and he's not getting any. Mind you, there was a club of us there, so it wasn't exclusive to him. But he, it would have been generous, I guess, of someone, either the studio or the Kubrick people, to give him a half a point or something, But of course, they're not generous. If it's not in the contract, then kiss my ass, There's no way. And so I think he resented the fact that the film was so successful.
Yeah.
But as I pointed out to him, look, you're going to sell millions more books, so you'll get it one way or the other.
Yeah.
And I guess he did, but honestly, I think he wanted me to do Enderby, which was another sequence of books that he'd written about this character, Enderby. Excuse me. I tried to get into it, and I couldn't. So for me, Clockwork was his masterpiece.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah.
But he was a very great man, a wonderful raconteur. I mean, I was doing interviews with him, and I sat there like a dumb idiot and just listened to him because he was so brilliant. Yeah. I mean, nothing that I was going to say. I just was so delighted to hang with him. But he was very anal, I'd pick him up at the Algonquin Hotel, which is where he wanted to stay, even though it was kind of seedy now, but in the 20s, that was the hotel with all the great writers, and they had this club and this whole thing going on at the Algonquin. And all the great American writers of the 20s were in this thing. And so, of course, he wanted to stay there. And I'd pick him up, in the limousine to go to whatever show it was. And he'd get in the car, sit down, and he'd go, have you had a dump? I go, well, good morning and hello. Yes, I believe I did this morning. And I go, Jesus, yeah. Maybe I'll get one this afternoon. I couldn't operate with, But having said that, as soon as they said action on these interviews, well, he was lit up. He was great. He was really great.
He just had to have his dump, that's all. Yeah. Oh, whoa. Really quick hand. There you go. First question.
Hello. My question is, I heard that Kubrick gave you the book to read. And And what about Alex's character thing? Because you said it'll make it less likable, or just like following. But what about the book? Because the book is a lot more visceral, I believe, or I read it. What about the book? He said maybe I can make this guy somewhat likable and made you want to play the role. Just read the book.
What's the question?
Sorry, the question is just from the book. Just from the book, like, what did you say yes to this? It's a current movie, but what do you think you make actually Alex likable? Because the book, he doesn't have the same tone of voice as you do. It's more like more vicious, I would believe so.
Essentially, you're asking what made him connect to the character? Yeah.
Well, you know, if you're given a book by Kubrick and you're asked to play the leading part, you'd have to be nuts to walk away from it. No, I read the book, you know, and I found it a bit of a struggle the first time I read it. But of course I went back and read it. I read it 3 times before I called it back. The second time I read the book, I thought, wow, this is quite an extraordinary story. How the hell are they going to film it? And then the third time I read the book, I just thought, what a great part. And the part really was up to me to make. It wasn't written in the book. It's between the lines. You know, I had to make it 3-dimensional to make it. And as I told you, the brief was to walk that fine line between making it real and making it palatable. And so I tried to do that by making this character love life. His joie de vivre was just infectious. And I think this is why when it opened, you know, serious editorials came out, the New York Times being one of them, to say that this was, you know, a fascist take. Kubrick was a fascist. All kinds of nonsense. You know? I mean, they do get up to all kinds of nonsense, these people. They got nothing to write about, I guess. But now they base that, I think, on the fact that you actually like this character. And then when you come away, you go, Jesus, they made me like this guy who's a rapist and a murderer.
Yeah.
What the hell is going on here? This is fascist. This is like mind control. It's bullshit. It's art is what it is. It's just being, you know, clever about it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it, really. I mean, there was no... I mean, I knew what I had to do. I just wasn't quite sure how to do it until I started it. And then I, you know, found it as I went, but I knew it was not going to be a naturalistic sort of performance. I knew it would have to be a heightened, you know, a heightened style that I didn't know had been invented before, because I couldn't think of one movie in this sort of category. And I couldn't even think of one part except for Olivier doing Richard III. And that was the only performance that I could think of where he was playing this dastardly king who's killed the 2 boys in the tower, which is all bullshit anyway. But anyway, that's what Shakespeare wrote, even if it was Shakespeare, which I doubt. But that's another discussion. But in fact, there's no way a grain merchant from Stratford-on-Avon is going to know all these stories, these Italian fables. He was the Duke of Oxford, for sure. Anyway. Of course, the Shakespeare people go nuts when you say that. So much fun. Anyway, it's funny that they know nothing about him. I'd rather talk about Shakespeare than Kubrick, actually.
We can do that. Yeah, I mean, that's...
So here you go. So we know nothing about Shakespeare except he was born in Stratford-on-Avon, and he was married, and he died. No, there's nothing about the guy at all. And we know about minor figures. We know what they had to eat, you know, what they shat practically. And I mean, we know every single minutia about them. And suddenly, this guy who wrote probably the greatest plays ever written, we don't know, you know, anything at all. So, and also, in that time, nothing got past the Queen. You know, the monarch was all powerful in terms of censorship. And so, if there was a play going on, Her Majesty or her minions would report back, and it would have to get the royal seal of approval. And if anything was ever slightly against her family, forget it, gone. And so it must have been somebody with royal connections, and that's why the theory is that it was the Duke of Oxford, who was also, in the beginning, apparently her lover as well. So
This sounds like a movie that we would love to see you in.
I think it's called Shakespeare in Love.
Love
No,
it.
huh? It's a wonderful film.
Something to what you said that I find interesting is that there was nothing in existence other than that you could pull from. But what's been fascinating is to see how many characters now that you see and you go, well, there's Malcolm McDowell, Alex and Clockwork. I mean, Heath Ledger's Joker in The Dark Knight. There's so many, and it's been incredible to see how many people have pulled from that and how much nuance and tone you see through other, you know, movies and films and stuff like that. So
Well, there you are. Somebody had to do it. But you know, at the time, I just had a ball doing it. And, you know, Kubrick, he sort of kept a rein on things by repetition. That was his control mechanism. It's like, do it again. Any reason, just do it again. Why? Do it again. Any reason? No, just do it again. Well, shit, I did the same thing before. What's going on? And then, by this, I get bored by take 8. So I start doing other stuff, just to amuse myself more than anything else. And suddenly, weird things start to happen. You know, like, and shit like that. Or I say to Stanley, look, Stanley, can I just say what the first thing that comes into my mind here? Now, this was the scene of the doctor wheeling in these pictures that I had to give immediate answers, just give immediate answers. They were trying to find out, you know, what the psychosis was on my brain, or what you know, where my recovery was at. And so there were scripted things from the book. And you know, and he kept saying, no, let's do it again. And in the end I said, look, I'm just going to say the first thing that comes into my head. You know, and I'd go, cabbages, knickers. And then start giggling because I found, you know, say to knickers to an Englishman, you go to heaps of laughter. It's like saying fart or something. And of course, I started to enjoy it myself, you know. So, and I would come up with, you know, no time to read the meter, love. No time for the in and out, love. I've just come to read the meter. I mean, fucking hilarious. So of course, that, where it is in the movie, gives it a tremendous lift. It's really weird, you know, that I would know that at such a young age. I wouldn't know it now. I think instinctively, you know, it's a very instinctive performance, and I mean, I'm an instinctive sort of actor, so if they try and make me do something that I don't feel is right, I won't do it, because it's not right.
Yeah.
You know, that's it, end of story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I saw your hand go. Yeah. Yeah.
Why not?
Oh, we'll go to you next. Yeah.
I was wondering what were some of your favorite films to work on, and or what are some of your favorite scenes that you've worked on throughout your illustrious career?
Oh.
Wow. How much time do we?
Well, look, to be honest, you know, when they say what's your favorite role, I always say the next one. And it is true. It really is, because the next one is the one that I'm going to be working on and figuring out how to make, you know, how to make it palatable, how to make it watchable, keeping to the truth of it. That's the main thing. Never losing the core of it, which is always the truth of the piece, whatever it is. You know, some stuff you do is total crap. You know? I mean, so I'm not talking about that so much, but there's some that you just do because it's a huge, crazy money to go to some god-awful place where they've got no restaurants usually, and so you suffer through a couple of weeks and get the hell out of there with a check. That's it. But you know, I am a professional actor, and that's what I do, and I'll give them 100% like I would do anything other.
Well, to spin off that, I'd love to talk. You have so much stuff that you're working on. I'd love to talk about some of the stuff you're excited about.
Well, let me just finish this for
Yes.
this young lady here. That I've done these movies in the Soviet Union, which are, I think, pretty cool. Nobody's ever seen them, but I don't give a damn. Just some of my favorite stuff. There's one called Assassin of the Tsar, which I think you can find on Vimeo or YouTube. There's another one called Ivalenko, about a serial killer in the Soviet Union. And it's one of my favorite performances because it's different for me. I usually work inside out. In other words, the emotion out. This one that I did, called Ivalenko, was exactly the opposite. I started with a physical thing and went in, which is basically what Olivier did. You know, he started with the nose, and he put putty and made a nose, and then the character would form, and then he'd find a physicality. Well, you know, that's kind of old hat to when we, you know, we watched Olivier, we always thought he was, real old-fashioned, you know, Brando's where it's at, you know, which of course was basically true, but there's really some valid things from working that way, and the one that loves doing it is Gary Oldman. You know, he loves to sit in that makeup chair, and I don't know how he's got the patience for it, but I guess he just zones out. I go, let's just put a bit of this and a bit of that. Let's go. Come on, I mean, I'll make them believe it. Don't worry. I don't have to change my physique. But it's just a different way of looking at it. And God knows he's brilliant. You know, I love watching his stuff. Anyway, yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, with your approach to the next role, are there some things that you're working on now that you're excited about?
I am. I'm doing a wonderful series at the moment. I've only done half of it in Newfoundland, which is the most easterly part of the Americas, and it's right under Greenland. In fact, if I look out of my hotel window, I can see icebergs floating by. Actually, I've never seen one, but that's the theory. I think because of obvious reasons. I think we're, you know, into global warming, aren't we, or something?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's the piece of land which is closest to the Titanic wreck. So there you are.
Wow.
And I will not be going down there. No. Dear Bill Paxton has spent time in St. John's, and he was a dear friend of mine, you know, and he made this documentary with James Cameron where they went down.
Yeah.
And I went in to get my watch fixed to a watchmaker, and he goes, oh yes, we had, you know, Bill Paxton came in. I went, dear Bill? And he goes, yes, and he bought, I had all these old watches that nobody on the island knew what they were, so they just sat there for years, and he bought every one of them, and he said he was going to go down and take them down to the Titanic wreck and have pictures taken of the watches with him by the wreck,
wow.
and then give them to all his friends.
Wow.
Which which was such a Bill Paxton thing. Yeah, what a loss that was.
He's a hometown hero. He's from right down the street in Fort Worth.
He's from Fort Worth.
Yeah.
He is indeed. And actually, when the Fort Worth Film Festival, I'm not sure what it was called, but
It's the Lone Star Film Festival.
thank you,
Yeah.
that's it. And then they asked me if I would accept a Lifetime Achievement Award. I said, absolutely, if Bill Paxton presents it. Because he lived in my hometown, where I live now. And so I called him and asked him, and I went, the basses will fly you out, Bill. He went, oh, okay. And I didn't know that he hadn't been back. And he had a bit of an argument with that film festival. I don't know why, but anyway, it was a great night. And instead of presenting it to me, he kind of roasted me, the bastard. And presented me with a hat. The same hat maker that made Kennedy's hat the morning of his assassination. It's called a Shady Oaks hat. And, you know, Bill knew he took me around to street corners where Kennedy stopped, talked, took me to the hotel, everywhere in Fort Worth. There's a picture of Bill on his dad's shoulders at Love Field.
Wow.
And really amazing. Yeah, he was big time into that. But anyway, he gave me this hat, it's one of my prized possessions.
Was it Pinman Brothers? Is that who it was?
No, it was called Shady Oaks. And he had to call them and beg them to make it because they're back ordered.
Wow.
And they did. And he gave it to me, and I didn't really know what he'd given me.
Yeah.
And I said, well, and when Kennedy was presented with this hat at the breakfast in Fort Worth, they said, Mr. Hat's on. And he went, well, I'll do it when, you know, I get back on Air Force One, because he didn't want to muss up his hair.
Yeah.
You know? And I understand that, believe me. Anyway, that's just a bit of history that, you know, anyway, Bill, we miss him, and he was a great actor, beautiful, beautiful spirit. And it's just nice to talk about him.
Absolutely.
Well, in almost his hometown, not quite.
Almost.
Yeah.
And how fitting, full circle, you were at the Texas Theater the other
Yeah,
night.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh my God, of course,
Yeah.
Oswald was arrested there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were next. Yeah, go ahead.
In your extensive career, you got to work with some of the best actors ever. Is
Yes.
there anyone you feel you miss acting with, or you're looking forward to acting with in the future?
Well, you know, there's some great young actors. Jesus, I mean, you know, I've always loved Leonardo. I think he's a very special actor.
Yeah.
I did work with Sean Penn. I love Brad Pitt. I love him. I love the fact that, you know, it's hit and miss, but he'll go for it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's ridiculous, but other times it's brilliant, as is the Tarantino film he did. He was so great. But both of them, amazing. All of them in that movie. But I guess I wish I'd worked with Jimmy Cagney, simply because I idolized it.
Yeah.
But you know, it would, you know, we were different eras. And I would never work with him. But I will tell you a story that I don't really tell that often because I don't really remember it. But I was called up by this actor called Pat O'Brien. Now I don't know. I certainly never met Pat O'Brien. And I only knew him because he was in Jimmy Cagney's movies, and I knew that he was a friend of Jimmy Cagney. So when the phone went and I answered it, he said, it's Pat O'Brien, and I sort of recognized the voice. You know, he always played the priest in everything. He was always the priest. And he said, I just wanted, you know, I'm a friend of Jimmy's, and he wanted you to know that he's been reading what you're saying about him, and he's really thrilled about it.
Wow.
And so we had a chat for 45 minutes, and it was a sort of, as close as I got to Jimmy was that.
Wow.
But, I was so kind of thrilled to get this call out of the blue, and, I wondered for the first 5 minutes whether somebody was gagging me or not. But I realized they weren't. Because when I talked in the press, they'd always say, who influenced you? It would always be Jimmy Cagney, Even though, I don't know, it's not really true, because I'm not thinking of Jimmy Cagney when I'm doing something. I mean, there was a scene in Gangster #1, a very violent movie I did, where I had to rail on a rooftop, I'm Gangster #1, all this stuff. And I kind of thought a little bit about Jimmy Cagney and that, because that's something he could do beautifully. He could die better than any man alive and dance down those steps and up them and down them, and he wouldn't die. He just kept dancing, and then boom, he died. And you'd go, wow, that's incredible. Yeah.
I love it. Does anyone have a Halloween Loomis question? Yep. All right, here we go. Right here.
I just want to know, what's the thought process that went into knowing that you had to fill Donald Pleasant's shoes? What was that like?
Filling what?
He's
Donald Pleasance?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't think about it.
This is your own thing.
I just did my own thing. Listen, either you like it or you don't. You can't worry about that. I just played what the part required. And actually, I never saw Donald Pleasance do it, and I still haven't.
Wow.
Simply because I'm not into horror like you guys. I just make it occasionally. I dip my toe in occasionally into the horror genre, but I'm looking for sort of more complicated parts, and usually horror movies, it's all in the scare, and I get it, it's fun. And I love playing Loomis, by the way. I had so much fun doing that.
We
with
loved
Rob.
you playing Loomis as well. Absolutely.
Seriously, he's the biggest turkey under the sun. Such an idiot. I kept saying to Rob, Jesus, what kind of a doctor is this? One patient, 17 years, the guy escapes and butchers half the town? I mean, how good of a psychiatrist could this guy be? And so when we came to do Rob's second one, I went, Rob, I don't really want to play one. He goes, well, let's change, let's make him an asshole. I went, great! And so, he came up with this thing that he's the only one to profit from the butchery of this, and by writing a book and being this total asshole. And it was so much fun to do. Now I know, to purists, it's not as good a film as the first one, but I enjoyed it anyway.
We loved it because it was different. There's so many different versions of Halloween out there. Everybody gets to put their own spin on it. All right, I want to go to this very young, small hand in the very back.
Yes!
Yes, sir.
Shout!
How was working with
Oh
Rob?
my God, okay. Well, I really love Rob Zombie. Mind you, I was asked to go meet with him in Mr. Chow's restaurant in Beverly Hills. And I thought, well, I've never heard of Rob Zombie. Well, I know he's a singer, but I've never actually seen him. And like an idiot, I didn't think to, look at the phone. So I thought, well, I don't know how I'm going to recognize him. Anyway, I walked into the restaurant, I looked around the patrons, and I saw Charles Manson. And I thought, oh, that must be Rob Zombie. And the sweetest guy ever, and the smartest. Jeez, he's really a smart guy. I love the guy. I've done a few things with him, and I did him a big favor because He wanted to get out of, you know, only being considered a director of horror. So somebody talked him into doing a TV thing, and he called me up and he said, Malcolm, look, I'm doing this CSI Miami thing. I'm doing a what is this?
CSI. Now I'm doubting it.
Okay. I'm doing this CSI thing, and I want you to play a part for me. Would you come in? And I went, well, which one is it? And when he said Miami, my heart sank. I wonder why. I'll let you guess that. So I went, yeah, okay. So I get there. Now they were shooting I think the shooting thing was only 6 days or something. Anyway, I get there on day 3. Rob immediately takes me inside and he goes, look, I just want to apologize right now. This guy is an absolute... We've got children here. I'm not going to say the word, but it begins with a C. And I went, oh, don't worry about it. No, don't worry about it. I mean, who is he? I mean, I've worked with Olivier, for Christ's sake. So my first shot was a drive in the limo as the window comes down, and I'm talking to the police guy. And so when I do that action, I look over and he's literally just texting on his phone. So I went, cut. I mean, can you remove the actor? Put a cross on the camera box. I'll do it to that. There's more emotion in that than I'm getting from the actor at the moment. So get rid of it. So, you know, I saw that the steam was coming out of his ears. But, you know, he was being disrespectful.
Yeah.
Not to me, disrespectful to his craft,
right,
which is unforgivable. So the next scene is in my office. I'm playing a corrupt lawyer, and who gets all his clients off doing these despicable things. I can't remember such crap. You know, so I learned the scene in my office, and the policeman comes in, and Rob just happened to say to me, be on the phone. Now, you never say that to me. You know, I'm going to make up a scenario on the phone like you would. So I go, hello, yes, darling. How are you? What are you wearing? So he comes in, and I took no notice. Yeah, no. We'll do it later tonight. No, same place. And he goes, get off the fucking phone! Yeah. No, that's a disgruntled client, I think. I'm not sure. I don't know. No, but listen, okay. Well, get off the fucking phone! I think it's a disgruntled client. I mean, I'm going to have to go, but I'll see you later, okay? Yes. Well, I have to say, they kept every single thing in that scene. Because the producers hated him and couldn't wait to tell him the whole thing was canceled. The producer said to us, look, you know, I put 3 children through college on this series. And he goes, I can't wait for the day when I tell him this, you're canceled. So get this, when they canceled it, just to make it really uncomfortable for him, they booked me and paid me a lot of money to come in and do the last 2 shows.
I've never seen an episode of CSI in my life, but I will be watching 3 episodes right now. And I'd love for somebody to just give you an acting role where you're just on the phone the entire time.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'd love to see it. All right, we got time for maybe 1, 2 more. Let's go here. Yeah. Yep.
I wanted to ask, how did you come across getting the Castlevania role in season 4. I just recently finished it and thought you were amazing. So I just wanted to know
Castlevania.
how you got it.
And what?
Castlevania?
What is that? That's not me. I don't think that's me.
No, that's the voiceover.
Oh, Jesus. Don't ask me about voices.
All right, moving on. All right.
Darling, look, I just go in, I don't even know what they call it. Hello, how are you? Okay.
It's basically just phone acting at that point.
Phone acting, I'm reading it, I never know what the hell they're called. And people go, oh, you were brilliant in Fallout 3. I went, that wasn't me. They go, yeah, here's the box. Oh, yeah.
Oh, man, I love it. All right, we can get through
This guy has
really
been-
quick,
he
like
had his-
rapid fire. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if there is a character from literature or like a remake of an older property or some such thing that you have not had the chance to play that you would like to, or that you would like to play in the future.
No.
All right, great. Moving on. Quick.
Back to A Clockwork Orange. The scene where they take your eyelids open.
Yeah.
And you're sort of being reformed.
Oh, man.
How difficult was that to film?
Horrible, absolutely horrible, scratch corneas.
All right, we're gonna take 2 more because I see two, 3 hands. All right, quick. Yeah.
Did you like working on Star Trek?
You know, I actually did. I actually turned that down a couple of times because they were very measly with the money. Kept going up, and finally, okay, I guess I can kill the old bastard for that. Oh, get over it. By the way, he had a very good run. If it was Leonard, no way would I ever bump Leonard off. Leonard was a saint. He was a great man, a beautiful actor. I loved him. And by the way, he was a terrific director too, by and by. But what a gentleman. And actually, I must say, I love old Fatty too. And you know, you've got to respect a man who's still bringing it at 90 years of age. God bless him. And I had a real good time with him, but when I'd done the deed, killed him, we supposedly did the last scene, even though we went back 2 weeks later and redid it, you know, he got his chair, put it next to me, and he had one of those dictator phone things, and he said, would you mind if I interview you? I went, what the hell for? He goes, well, you know, I'm doing a book, I gotta, you know, squeeze everything out of this thing that I can. I went, okay. He goes, okay, I'm here with Malcolm McDowell, we're on the set. Just, what's it like, Malcolm, killing, you know, an icon of television? I went, oh, well, Bill, I think half the audience are going to hate me, and the other half are going to love me. Who's going to love you? I said, well, the ones that have had up to here, Bill, with you of 35 fucking years. Okay, let's forget about that.
I'm coincidentally hosting a panel with him next week at another convention, so I'll tell him you said hi.
Well, if that's the way you interpret it, fine.
All right, we're gonna go to you. Last question.
Have you got Patrick as well?
I have Shatner and George Patton.
Oh, okay. Oh my God, they love each other. He'll be over there, and he'll be over there.
They are separate panels.
Hilarious. Yes.
Clockwork the book had a 21st chapter where Alex matures and decides, I no longer want to do this, and move on. How did you feel that that was not included in the movie?
Kubrick, that was a fake chapter added after to placate the British publisher who wanted a happy ending. So if they wanted Alex to be like a bank manager by the end of it or whatever. You know what, I never actually got through the whole chapter. Kubrick said, don't read it, it's crap. And even Burgess, when I asked him, said, oh yeah, they just wanted that, forget it, that wasn't the book. So, there we go.
Thank you.
Okay. Great. Thank you all.
Thank you guys. Mr. Malcolm McDowell. Supposed to remind you, he will be at his table the rest of the day. He's got tons of great stuff.